Yo, what is up everybody, Chuck here, and welcome to today's daily Pokemon Go video. We are going to be breaking down in depth the best Pokemon to use against every single raid boss in Pokemon Go. Basically everything you need to know about getting into raids you should be able to learn today from this video, and if not, then I have failed miserably. Now we're going to start with level 1, move on to level 2, and then level 3, and then level 4. I'm also going to make this super easy for everybody, so if you don't want to watch the entire video and you want to skip to just the Pokemon that you need to battle in an upcoming raid in like 10 minutes from now, I'm going to leave a pinned comment that includes a timestamp for every single raid boss. You're welcome. Let's kick it off with our favorite Magikarp. Magikarp is weak to electric and let's be real. It doesn't matter what you use against a Magikarp. If you can't beat a Magikarp with literally any Pokemon in your collection besides maybe a Pidgey, you should delete the app. Next up, we've got Quilava, fire-type Pokemon, weak to rock and water. Pokemon you're gonna want to use against it: Golem, Vaporeon, Starmie. But again, it's a level 1 raid, so you could probably use literally just about any evolved water Pokemon you've got in your arsenal. For Alligator, Blastoise, Tyranitar if you really need the overkill. You should be able to solo basically any level 1 raid and probably level 2 raid as well. So next up for level 1 raids, Bayleaf, grass Pokemon, weak to fire. So use one of your fancy Charizards that you just caught during the Fire and Ice type event. If you didn't catch one, use a Flareon. If you don't have a Flareon, Typhlosion, as long as your Typhlosion doesn't know Solar Beam, which would be terrible. Or Arcanine, they should all do the trick, should be relatively easy to do on your own. And the final level 1 raid, Croconaw, weak against electric and grass, so the Pokemon you should use against it. You're probably going to hear this trio quite a bit during this video: Executor, Venusaur, and Jolteon, which are the 3 best water type counters in the game. Although again, it is level 1, so you could definitely get away with using a Pokemon like a Raichu or an Ampharos or a Victreebel. Anything basically that is at least okay. You'll be able to solo a level 1 raid. Don't worry about it. Skip to the next part. Level 2 raids. We're going to group the first 2 together, Muck and Weezing. They are weak to Psychic and Ground types. Now I've already soloed 2 Muck raids with about half the time left after completing it, so it's really not difficult to do. Against both Muck and Weezing, go with an Alakazam, an Espeon, an Executor. Any of those 3 should work. If you don't have those 3, throw 6 Golems at it. Now we're gonna get into this more later, but there's kind of a difference in terms of your outlook on a raid when you show up to it. So let's say you get to a level 3 or level 4 raid and you're looking at your group of people around and there's like one other person. You're gonna have a different mindset going into that raid than you would if you show up and there are 37 people there. But we'll talk about that later. Let's finish up the level 2 raids. Next up, we've got Electabuzz, the perfect 6-man team to go against an Electabuzz: Gengar, Dragonite, Alakazam, Rhydon, Golem, Donphan. If you don't have all 6 of those, use any combination of the 6 that I just named and you should be fine. Next level 2 raid, we've got Magmar, another one you should easily be able to solo. Fire type Pokemon, weak against water and rock types. So just like the Quilava, go with a Golem, Vaporeon, or a Starmie, but again, level 2 you can do it on your own. Amistar is also a very good option, and Tyranitar you can kind of replace in almost any of these raid battles. However, because of the new update to the gym system, same type attack bonus definitely means a lot more than it used to. You know, in the past we probably would have used a bajillion Dragonites against every raid boss and probably won them with ease, but now you kind of have to pay attention a little bit. And finally, we've got Executor, probably the hardest of the level 2 raids to do on your own. Weak against bug types, fire types, ghost types, dragon types. So Pokemon like Pinsir, Gengar, Heracross if you have one. You could also definitely throw in a Scizor as long as it's got bug type moves like X-Scissor. So basically, if you're battling a level 2 raid and you lose, it's going to be for one of 2 reasons. Number 1, you didn't deal enough DPS, or number 2, all of your Pokemon fainted. Whichever one happens, you're going to have to kind of meet in the middle. So let's say you didn't deal enough DPS and you're using more tanky Pokemon, like let's say a Dragonite. So in this situation for the Executor, swap out your Dragonite for a Pokemon like a Pinsir or a Heracross. They'll do more damage, but they'll take less damage. Now if you're in the situation where all of your Pokemon fainted, that means you need to switch one of them out for a Pokemon that's a little more tanky, that can deal damage, but also take a lot more. So like a Dragonite can take like twice as much as a Pinsir, but it'll deal a comparable amount of damage. Makes sense? Okay, good. On to the level 3 raids, and this is where you're gonna start needing friends. So if you don't have friends, leave now. You can't do a level 3 raid solo unless you're like level 37, 38. First up for the level 3 raid bosses, we're gonna talk about Vaporeon, weak to electric and grass. You're gonna use the water counter. Executor, Venusaur, Jolteon. Use 2 of each of those, you'll be gold. If for some reason you don't have a Pokemon like a Venusaur, you can substitute it with like an Ampharos or a Victreebel. One's electric, one's grass, they both deal a bunch of damage. Next up, we're gonna talk about Arcanine, weak to water and ground. Golem, Starmie, Vaporeon. You're gonna use those basically against any fire type Pokemon you encounter in a raid. Basically any Pokemon with Water Gun and Hydro Pump that has the CP somewhere over like 1800, you should be good to go with. Rhydon is a viable option as well, however, Mud Slap is not a very good fast move, so that's kind of why Rhydon falls down the list in terms of attackers. But if your Rhydon has Stone Edge or Earthquake, go for it. Might as well talk about Flareon next because it too is a fire Pokemon, also weak against water, rock, and ground. Golem, Vaporeon, Starmie, Amistar works well as long as you've got one of the legacy movesets because the new movesets for Amistar are really bad. So if you've got one with Hydro Pump, use it. And again, Rhydon is a good option as well, but it's more tanky. So if you find you're not doing enough damage, switch your Rhydon into something like a Vaporeon, and you'll be good to go. Next up is Machamp, and there have been rumors going around that people can solo a Machamp raid on their own. How are they doing it? With Psychic types. Pokemon like Espeon, Executor, Alakazam, all good to go. Just double check, make sure that your Executor has Psychic type moves and not Grass type, because if it's a Grass type Executor, it's probably not going to do very well. Now, whenever I mention Alakazam, I would always start a raid with an Alakazam. It'll deal the most damage the quickest, but it'll also faint really quickly. So if you find that your Pokemon are just dying real quick, maybe get rid of one of your Alakazams and throw in something a little more tanky, like an Executor. Next up, we've got an interesting one, Gengar, and I've got a theory here. Now, Gengar is weak against Dark and Ghost type Pokemon, so in essence, it is weak against itself. So if you don't have a Gengar, throw a Ditto at it. Your Ditto will transform into a Gengar, a really good one actually, and probably do pretty well against it. If you do have a Gengar, use a Gengar. Any combination of those four should work. Also, if you want to try it out with 6 Dittos, I would be very interested to see that happen. Next up, we've got Jolteon, who is weak against ground type moves. But again, just like Electabuzz, you're still going to probably want to use Pokemon like Alakazam, Dragonite, Gengar just to deal DPS quickly because most of the ground Pokemon in this game don't have very good quick moves. But a crew of Gengar, Dragonite, Alakazam, Rhydon, Golem, and Donphan will definitely take care of it for you. Now on to the final level 3 raid boss, Alakazam. Alakazam is weak against Dark and Ghost type moves, so this is your chance to show off a little bit and put your awesome Tyranitars to use. A lineup of Tyranitar, Gengar, and Houndoom is probably going to be your best bet. If you have more than one Tyranitar, use it, as long as it's got a moveset like Bite and Crunch. Although it was terrible to get when you evolved it, now it's useful. Alright, now on to the level 4 raids. We're going to start it off with Lapras, who has a weakness to Electric, Grass, and Fighting type. Pokemon you're going to want to use against it, Machamp. You're going to hear Machamp a lot, so what you need to do right now is stop this video, go out and fight a level 3 Machamp raid. Defeat that raid, catch the Machamp, and use that Machamp against other level 4 raids. So Machamp, Executor, Heracross are all good options against a Lapras, or you could use like a Venusaur, an Ampharos, or a fully maxed out Primeape with a good moveset. Next up, we've got Blastoise, another water type Pokemon, weak against Electric and Grass. Pretty much the same here, Executor, Venusaur, Jolteon, Victory Bell would also work, Ampharos again works, but Executor is definitely your go-to simply because of how much damage it can take and how much damage it can deal. Just make sure it doesn't have Psychic type moves because then that's kinda useless. Next up is Snorlax, and against Snorlax you're gonna need a couple fighters. Machamp, Heracross, Alakazam, 6 Machamps. Just use 6 Machamps. And this is where it's going to start depending on which moveset the Pokemon that you're battling in the raid actually has. I've battled 2 different Tyranitars, they both had different movesets. 2 different Mucks, they had different movesets. So if the Snorlax are battling knows Earthquake and you're using a Rhydon, your Rhydon is toast. Just keep that in mind. Next up, we've got Venusaur. Venusaur is weak against Fire and Psychic. Now I've done a Venusaur raid and it was actually pretty simple compared to a Tyranitar. But basically any combination of Pokemon like Flareon, Charizard, Arcanine, just make sure it has fire type moves. Alakazam and Espeon, like I said earlier, start off your raid with an Alakazam because it'll deal the most damage the quickest, and you want to stack up the early part of the raid with your best damage dealers because the rewards are based off of how much damage you deal relative to everybody else in your group. So if you save your Alakazam for last, you're not going to be able to take advantage of how much damage it can actually deal, and you're not going to get better rewards. So do your Alakazam first. You're welcome. In fact, that goes for all Pokemon and all raids. Put your best damage dealers first, and then the ones that are kind of like your safety nets at the end. Next up, we've got Charizard, who is weak against water, ground, and rock types. Here I would go with like a Golem, an Amistar, a Vaporeon, maybe even Sudowoodo, which is what a lot of people say you can use to counter Charizard, as long as it knows Stone Edge. If it doesn't, don't even bother. So any combination of a Golem, Amistar, Vaporeon combo will probably get the job done. Now onto one of the hardest raids in the game, we've got Rhydon. Luckily though, Rhydon is weak against grass and water types. Executor, Venusaur, Vaporeon, you'll be good to go. But again, double check and make sure the Executor you're using in a battle against a Rhydon has grass moves. If you're short on grass type Pokemon, Victory Bell is a good substitute, and if you're really short, Meganium, I guess. But really, just load up on 6 Vaporeons and you'll be good. And finally, Tyranitar, the big daddy of them all. Tyranitar is weak against fighting, and like I said earlier, you need Machamp. You need a lot of Machamps. To take out a Tyranitar, you need at least one good one. 2 preferably. Machamp, Heracross, Primeape, Scissor, all of them will do the job. If you've got a Primeape with counter and close combat, level that bad boy up. You'll be able to put it to use a lot in raids and it'll actually make all that Mankey candy useful. Now Tyranitar is also weak to a whole bunch of other type moves like grass, ground, water, bug, steel, which is where Pokemon like Scissor comes in because regardless of the moveset, it's going to be effective against a Tyranitar. You're going to want something with fists like a Machamp or a Primeape or a Scissor, and that basically covers it. Now, in case you guys need a quick little recap, level 1 raids, you can solo them. Level 2 raids, you can solo them. Level 3, you can solo it if you're a really high level, like 38, 39, 40. If not, you're probably gonna need 2 people. Level 5 raids, you don't need 18 people. You don't even need 12. You barely need like 7. So when it says that the suggested group size is like 19 people, you can kind of ignore that. I think that's implying 19 people who are blind or only have 1 finger or something like that. Again, I'm gonna pin a comment below this video that has a timestamp for every single Pokemon we just talked about. So if you ever need to come back because you're on a way to a raid, you can come back to this video, find the comment, click on the time, and boom, you're gonna have all of the knowledge at your fingertips. Hopefully this was helpful. If you enjoyed, make sure to give this video a thumbs up. If you're playing Pokemon Go and you're like, I need more people to watch, you should sub to me. I love you all. Hope you guys are enjoying the daily uploads. Take it easy.